Great. Well, as Christy said, thank you everyone for joining us for this Loving John conversation. The film follows John Gardiner, a Pacific Islander and ultra runner, and his husband Peter Dare as they face ALS together. It's an honest and personal story filled with humor, love, and community. If you haven't had a chance to watch it yet, the film is streaming through Monday, November 10th. Whether you've seen it or not, we think you'll find this conversation every bit as moving and full of heart as John himself was. Our first guest is Loving John's director and producer, Robert Rooy. An award-winning independent filmmaker, Rob has spent his career creating media that supports human rights, international development, and environmental causes around the world. His earlier film, Deej, won a Peabody Award and an Emmy nomination, and he's worked on more than 40 major films and TV shows, including Lonesome Dove, Minority Report, and The West Wing. With Loving John, Rob brings his deep storytelling experience to a moving story about love, caregiving, and community. Our next guest is Peter Dare, John's husband and partner of many years. Peter and John met in California as newly released veterans, John from the Army and Peter from the Navy. Work opportunities brought them east to DC and eventually to Maryland, where they built a life rooted in community and service. Peter worked as a land surveyor and John as a mortgage consultant with Citibank. Together, they became beloved members of the Myersville Lions Club. Peter still lives in their mountainside home beside the wooded trails John loves so much.
Can I just ask, Peter, do you want us to refer to you as John's husband or his sugar daddy? Because that's what he called you in the film.
Husband would be preferable, thank you.
Okay, all seriousness. Okay. Also with us is Chris Grable, a registered nurse with 40 years of experience and health director at Daybreak Adult Day Services. Christine works closely with adults and families managing complex health needs in a compassionate community setting. She had the privilege of caring for John Godinay and supporting his husband, Peter Dare, during John's journey with ALS, and her warmth and dedication shine through both her work and in the film. So I will start with some questions that we have already provided to the panelists. And so, Rob, you are first. What first drew you to John and Peter's story, and how did you know it was one that you needed to tell?
Well, I was just finishing up my previous film, Deej, and I read an article in the local Frederick News Post, our local community hometown newspaper. It was between Christmas and New Year's in 20. It was New Year's 2017, and it was an article about John, who at that point was a legend in terms of as a fitness guru, as a long distance runner. I mean, this guy would run 100-mile races, weekends back to back. He was tremendous, but he was mostly loved for how he made other people feel. He was so genuine and so good at that. And I knew him because my wife teaches yoga, and I would see these times my wife's yoga class would finish and 30 people would try to get out of a room at the same time that 35 or 40 would want to crowd in for John's Zumba class, and it was chaos. And my wife later told me that actually at that point she was having to help John thread the cable to his Walkman or his phone into the studio sound system. Uh, but the article told us that he had ALS and that there was going to be this big run on January 1st that was going to be a fundraiser at the same time. And I went to it, and it was a crowd of runners, crowd of people, and there was a big salad bowl where that was overflowing with 5s, 10s, 20s, and what have you. And that was just the start. And I thought I was going to make this 20-minute upbeat movie about friends gathering around their own and pushing him through his favorite races and all of that. And by the end of that first year, I was totally hooked, and I was hooked by John and an amazing, wonderful person he was, but also about the whole community of people around him, including Peter, including Chris, including Jennifer and Kevin, who are eavesdropping on this, actually, who were on a trip, but they knew this was happening and decided to tune in. And I also had a personal investment in that when I was in college, my older brother died of multiple sclerosis. And it was a very emotional time, as you can imagine. And my sister-in-law would never get more than an hour and a half or 2 hours sleep at a time. And it was and so I knew what we were in for. And part of it might be even responding in that my college, young college brain and emotions weren't enough to take advantage of this wonderful, charismatic brother that I had. And I do regret to this day not having spent more time with him. Who knows? Maybe that back there percolated up too. So.
Hmm. Thank you for that insight. As a follow-up to that, the film shows both challenges and the laughter that filled John and Peter's life together. How did you find that balance while filming?
Well, I think John set the pace. I mean, throughout the 5 years or so that I spent with him, that was his approach to life, and you could be on the deepest subject, you could be on the most heartfelt, emotional subject, and John would have a crack to make. He would just have a way of diffusing a situation. And it was also, part of his modus operandi to get through things and to navigate life. And Peter could talk to this more than I, but in filming in American Samoa, I got very much the sense that that was his way of navigating 18 years in American Samoa as a gay boy too. He could diffuse any bullying, any other kind of situation. He just had that knack. And I realized that that was a real strength.
Mm. Thank you. Peter, what do you most want people to understand about who John was as a husband, a veteran, and a friend?
John was always a bubbly personality, and but he was also a loyal Samoan kid to family and friends, and he always shared everything that he had. That's the way it is in Samoa. Uh, what's yours is yours, and what's mine is mine, but it's all shared. Everything is shared among the family and friends, and John has that sharing personality. And that's the reality of it. He's opened up my life. He's actually the light of my life. And I'm a little bit more introverted than he is. And he helped me along the way too, educating me, getting to grow with the community outlook that he always shared.
That's wonderful. Christine, what stands out in your memory about John? A moment that captures his personality or strength?
Well, John came in here and he was probably one of our clients who had some of the most physical needs, but because of his wonderful personality and his spirit, he was just so easy to take care of. And he was so kind. He would go to people who were the more difficult or grumpy clients, and he would always find a way to make them smile or make them become engaged. And he felt that he was not here just for himself, but it was his calling to engage other people. A few moments stand out, but I'm going to go with positive and I'm going to go with the serious, if that's okay. He used to always go in the heads of the groups with Leanne. They used to teach. They used to teach together in the community in aerobics and all of that. So she was a PE teacher too, and she was our activity assistant. So he would go in the front of the room with her, and if he couldn't do the moves because he was in a wheelchair by then when I first met him, he would call out the moves and cheer everybody on and just kind of add that energy and that personality to the groups. So she would do the moves and he would go, come on, Leanne, you could do it higher. Come on, you could do it. And he'd wake up people that were sleeping and just get everybody engaged. And it was delightful to see that no matter what, he could still give that much to people in the community, and everybody loved him and he was a favorite. I think a turning point to me of just being John's nurse at daybreak and someone who really admired him was when he came to me one day, and Rob was with him, and he said, I need to talk to you privately when you have the time. And I said, okay. So I went and I got him, and Rob and him came in with Rob's camera. And I never said this to John or to Rob, but I was like, oh my God, they're coming in here with the camera. What am I getting myself into? And he started to ask me the really serious questions about his death. And he was really concerned about his death and how he was going to help Peter with the stages and open that conversation to talk about his death and what he wanted. And I really don't know what I said, honestly. I just talked to my heart and spoke to him and asked him what he wanted and what he wanted to happen. And he told me and Rob, and I think a lot of that ended up in the film. And it just opened up a bond between us that was more than just the friendly nurse and the participant. And I just hope I was up to the challenge at the time and that I did what I needed to help John through that and Peter. And that's how I kind of got more involved with John on a deeper level.
Thank you for sharing that. Sounds like he really trusted you, you know?
It was an honor. And at the time I was like, oh God, I hope I can do this. I hope I'm up for this. But, we never know what God's going to call on us to do and why he puts us in places. And I just hope that, I was in the right place at the right time. And it led me into this beautiful community. John and Peter and Rob, they have this community. I've never seen anything like it, of so many people that support each other, that help each other. And I mean, John's been gone for a while now, and yet it's like he's still with us. We just saw his film at the beginning of September, and it was crowded. It was standing room only, and it was sold out, and it was a wonderful event, and it was a celebration of his life. And I mean, we all can only hope for something like that. So it was been an honor.
Well, that's a great lead into our next kind of section of questions about caregiving, love, and daily life. And so, Peter, I've got a question for you. So many here know what it means to care for someone that they love. What helped you stay grounded and connected to John throughout that journey?
Well, the reality of it is that John and I have always had bumps on the road of life. Hit potholes occasionally, and this was just another pothole at the beginning of it. Only we realized that it was a one-way road. And the reality of John is that he is so deeply religious. He and his family, that's the Samoan way of life, they had a positive outlook for the future. And we realized that there are some things over which we have no control. So as time went on, because ALS is a gradual condition, we just evolved, doing what had to be done. We were fortunate with the VA help. I was able to do medications at home. Had tremendous support from the VA and from friends. It was a growth kind of thing for me and a challenge. But it was a challenge for John too, because it was something that we had to do together. And that kept us both grounded, and we were considerate of each other as well. We tried to come to an agreement, sometimes not easy, but ultimately common sense prevailed, and we just kept going one day at a time with a positive outlook. John was always a really positive person, as I am as well. And we knew that we were heading along this path, and accepting help from other people helped to share that burden. So it was a group activity all the way along.
Definitely. Thank you. So Christine, you did touch on this already about, professional caregivers do become part of the family. Aside from what you mentioned with John talking to you with Rob privately, what helped with that connection and mutual trust with John and Peter?
Well, during COVID, we used to make daily phone calls 7 days a week to all of our participants to check in with them, to talk and see if they had any needs, if they need any supplies delivered, whatever, and just kind of touch base with them. And we were supposed to be a resource for them, but in honesty, it was a lifeline for us too, because it gave us something to do and try to still be helping and still be a nurse during this shutdown. But at one point during COVID, I got a call from, I think it was Rob, asking me if I would be willing to come out to see John and Peter and to talk to them. They were having some problems communicating, as all husbands and wives and husbands or any couple partners do. And they asked if I would come over and just talk with them. And again, I was like, whoa, I'm not a social worker. I'm not a counselor. And they felt comfortable with me and they trusted me. And so they asked for me. And so again, I just went with my gut and said, I'm just going to go and hear what they have to say and talk to them. So I went over once or twice and we talked and we were outside in the cold, far away, COVID, on their back porch with their dogs running around. And we just talked. And my goal was just to get them to talk to each other and to open up. And I went in there and I learned a lot of things about John I didn't know. I mean, everybody talks about how positive John was, and he was, but I think he did have some depression, and who wouldn't with everything that he was going through. Went from being an athlete to basically being an invalid in a chair. That was not what anybody would want. And I also learned that he had some ups and downs, as Peter said. He had some problems with alcohol, and Peter was always there to pick him up and lift him up. And so in those sessions, I learned to really respect and relate to Peter in a way that I think was also special, not just as John's husband, but as a person. And I really think Peter was a rock. And it possibly helps because I'm like John, that outgoing person in front of a lot of people and like just light bulb on. And my husband is like Peter. He's like the quiet, calm rock who just gets it done. No fuss, no muss, and unsung hero. And so I could see that in Peter, and I just felt like we built a bond. And I hope that's true, Peter. And, yes. And so it ended up being lovely. It was a wonderful experience to get to talk to them and get them to share some things that they hadn't shared with each other, and really an opportunity to get Peter to be heard. Because I think maybe in the beginning it was a lot of it, not intentionally, but it was focused on John because he's the person with ALS. So of course we're going to focus on him. And I don't think Peter was getting quite as much airtime, for lack of a better way to put it. And I was just glad to kind of help with that conversation, facilitate that conversation. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I had muted. No, it's wonderful that you did that, and that I can imagine you like, oh, what am I getting into now? They're calling me.
They gave me alcohol. I'm not gonna lie. I think they gave me a glass of wine, and I took it.
Oh,
Only human. It was off the clock.
exactly. Well, what did care look like for John? The small moments that carried meaning or comfort.
Well, it changed as John came here. When he first came here, he was able to transfer to the toilet and to urinate and to do stuff with assistance. But later on, it became less. In fact, at one point, he ended up with a catheter on, a Texas catheter. A lot of times it would blow, so we would have to change it and completely change him. And most of our staff were younger girls and who weren't comfortable doing that kind of stuff with a man. And so I would go and I would help them, and John and I would make jokes about it and, just joke about different things and not have the conversation be about what we were doing, but make it be about something else. So we took the focus off of that till it got to the point that people were saying, oh, I want to be John's person today. I want to be John's person, because they knew that they were going to get to go and have alone time one-on-one with John and me, and get to laugh and just get to know John better. So, and he needed to be fed by the end when he was here. He needed to be fed and monitored and sips between food and stuff. So staff had to feed him, and the staff were just fighting over him. They all wanted to do it because he was just that much fun to be around.
Aw, that's so sweet. Well, I mean, you've already touched on this too, but how did humor, music, the simple joy show up in your days together?
Oh my God. You'll see it if you watch the film, you'll see a lot of it. He just picked on everybody and joked with everybody. And Halloween was one of my favorite John memories. We all dressed up for Halloween, and I dressed as a hippie this year. And, I'm wearing my tie-dye shirt, my beads, my peace sign, my earrings, a long wig, and, jeans with holes in it, the whole bit, sandals. And John was dressed in head to toe in all white, wrapped from head to toe in all white in his wheelchair. And so I went up to him and I said, John, what's your costume? And he goes, I'm a joint. And I go, okay. And so then I had a coworker who was very religious, never married, never had a boyfriend, never dated, just took care of her family, just like she would have been a nun if she was Catholic, but she wasn't Catholic. And she comes in and we're back in the office. She goes, John's costume is my favorite. And I go, John's costume, your favorite? Why? She goes, he's Gandhi. And I go, he's Gandhi? And then somebody else goes, he's a mummy. He's not Gandhi. And somebody else says, he's a tampon. And somebody else says something else. So I go up to John and I'm like pretending I'm outraged. I go, John, I have a bone to pick with you. You told me you were Gandhi, and you told Linda you were Gandhi, and told me that you were a joint. And he goes, I am who you need me to be. That was his answer. And it was just so funny. And it was so true. It was so John that he was to all of us who we needed him to be. And we all just laughed so hard about that. It was just so fun. So,
Oh my goodness. I can see why everybody loved being around him. And it does show in the film too. Before we go to the next set of questions, I'd like to open it up to just if anybody has any questions. Is there that you haven't messaged in the chat? I can pause for a second. Just raise your hand. Otherwise, I can jump right back in. No? Okay. I will continue. Just message in the chat if you've got anything. We'll keep
Actually,
an eye.
Kelly, could I
Yeah.
just add one more thing on to what Chris was talking about?
course.
And that is we really do try in the film to really be do the whole journey justice. And there are moments. I had a lot of time with John because it was COVID. It was like I had to be outside and there'd be an open window, but a lot of distance. And John would be inside and Peter would be catching up on a myriad of other things. It was kind of like, John, what do you want to talk about today? And out of that came some really sober, serious, difficult discussions, which are in the film and were part of the reason why Chris comes back into the film later too, to help everyone deal with that. But I just want to make sure, as we describe John as the human magnet that he is, that I do want to say that he had his moments. It's impossible not to, obviously, and all of you who are attending tonight know that. So I just wanted to pipe up and say that.
I do have one other thing to say. John had caregivers in the home that helped him too. Effie was like his private nurse. She would come over and do his bathing and help him, watch marathon movies, help with his feeding, whatever he needed, just to give Peter a break. And she would spend hours with John, and they would just joke around, and it was their date night. And so she was just a blessing to John and Peter, I know, in providing care for them at home that allowed John to stay in the home a lot longer. And John, as a special gift before he passed, put her in the direction to come to Daybreak. And she is still one of my PRN nurses. In fact, she's working here tomorrow. So John sent her over to me as a special gift, and I'm blessed to have her just as they are. So I just want to give credit to her, to Jennifer, who just was his constant by his side till the time he passed. It wasn't just, they did all the heavy lifting really with Peter, and I just want to give them the credit.
Kelly, Chris has his hand raised, so if we want to.
Oh, yes, Chris, please.
Sure. Hi, guys. And again, Peter, Robert, and Chris, thank you guys so much, for the amazing film and for the opportunity to be here with you this evening. Peter, I'm very curious. You mentioned the topic of positivity and obviously in sharing the burden with others. And I think in any time of strife or trials, positivity can A, be hard to come by, but B, be so welcoming and really be fuel as we continue to walk forward in our lives. I'm curious, beyond that collective nature that you described in the Q&A, where did you continue to draw your positive energy from?
Well, when John and I got together, we were together 43 years when John passed. When we first got together, John did refer to me as his sugar daddy. And I said, John, ain't no way. We both needed to have some independence, build up self-reliance. And I did not want John to ever feel that he had to be with me because I was a major income source. Oops, sorry about that. I didn't want him to be attached because he had to be. We were together because we wanted to be all this time. And that's always been our outlook for
It
the
was some
future.
40 years, right, Pete?
43 years. Yeah, 43 years. But that was critical. Part of that independence enabled him to go get a job and be good at it. He learned the banking. He worked at Citibank for 25 years, helping people retain their houses through mortgage difficulties. He was able to help them refinance to keep their homes. So we both had a positive attitude in terms of what we were achieving in life. In addition to having fun together, the good thing about his aerobic teachings on the weekends is that all of his aerobic earnings were his fun money. He could do whatever he wanted with it. So those are the kind of things in terms of positivity and outlook on life that helped us through the hard times.
Thank you.
Never changed.
Mm.
I might just add very briefly that a lot of the later time in this film takes place during COVID. So that put, as you can imagine, humongous pressure on Peter in that he was the only person who could be entrusted to be John's caregiver. At that point, John had a difficulty breathing. And you can imagine if he ever caught COVID, what that would look like. And I just want to give a shout out to a number of maybe a half dozen, 6, 8, 10 people who were constantly support people, even from the outside, even though they couldn't come in the house even and hug John. And Peter never had to go grocery shopping or errand running. There was a wall because of COVID, and it was John and Peter, and then it was all the support people on the outside.
Well, Rob, in addition to what you just said about people coming together to support them, what else did you learn about community from watching how people did show up for John and Peter?
It's interesting. I mean, community happened differently at different stages of the movie. The first year, John was on Facebook every day, and he would always have pictures, and it would be him. In a couple of cases, it was bruises where he had taken a header, but he had hundreds and hundreds of followers on Facebook. And then when Peter and John had their house, Veterans Administration was a big player in support systems too. And John lived at the VA in Martinsburg, West Virginia, about 45 minutes from here, for 10 months while the rehab was going on. And that was another whole supportive community and was its own, so we went from big to VA sized to when we came back down to that 6 or 8 or 10 people that we're talking about. And really because of COVID at times too. So community manifested itself in different ways, in size, but also in intensity. The smaller the group of people, the more dedicated, the more they were there emotionally and everything else. So it was always there, but it changes, interestingly.
Yeah, definitely. For Peter and Chris, what sustained you through the most difficult moments?
You want to go first, Peter? Or you want me to?
For me, it was just our love that John and I had been through so much over the years. Life isn't always easy. And that kept us together, that and sharing community, all of our friends. John actually started out as a Lions Club member. He was invited to join uh, many years ago, probably a little over 30 years ago. So John is a joiner. He's a real fun person. He loved the activity. And after about 6 months, he invited me to join. And I reluctantly went along. But as time went on, we both enjoyed all the activity and we had fun dealing with people, dealing with the community and John's running friends, his aerobic friends. He had such a wide range. I'm more of introverted in background. I don't mind being in the background as support for everybody else. And that worked perfectly. John was the magnet for the activity, and that worked really well for me. I could stay in the background when I wanted to, sit and have a beer with my dogs. That suited me well.
What about you, Chris?
Well, I would say respect for John and Peter and for their bravery. I mean, not many people would be willing to put their whole lives and their most private moments and their trauma on film for other people to share with the world and let them know what happened, what they were going through. And I mean, it's gut wrenching when you think about what they were willing to do. And I just wanted to do anything I could to love and support them and to help them in any way I could. And I was just, like I said, blown away by their sense of community. Never seen anything like it in my 40 years of nursing. So I was just happy to do my small part, but it's all on Peter and John, but mostly Peter and for what they did.
Well, to all of you, what can we do to make life with ALS for patients, the caregivers, the families more supported and less isolating?
Well, from my perspective, don't ever feel any inhibition to confront people, offer advice, or offer any help to anybody. Inquire whether there are things that you could possibly do. It doesn't have to be a big issue. It could be a tiny thing like go out and get groceries for somebody or give somebody a ride somewhere at some time. Chat with people, and don't ever feel any inhibition in even asking about how do you feel? What can I do for you today? And even share your experiences of the day with people dealing with ALS. Because ALS is a long journey for a lot of people. And it's a gradual thing. Some days are good, some days are bad, some days are so-so. And anybody from the outside coming in to help, to offer any help would be appreciated.
I would say keeping the communications, the lines of communication open and honest. Don't be afraid to ask them how they're feeling, what their fears are, if they have any plans, if they have any wishes for what happens at the end? Do they want to be at home? Do they want to be in a hospital? Do they want to be in hospice? Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions and let them say what they really want and what they feel and express their feelings, because they're going through all those questions in their heads all the time. And they just probably don't know how to bring it up to you because they don't want to upset you or they don't want to be negative. And so let them know that you're there to talk about anything they want to talk about and that you want to know too, because God forbid you don't know. Like Peter knew that John wanted to go back home to be buried for his final resting. And he knew he wanted a celebration of life and all sorts of things. And he made sure all of it happened with his family. And if John hadn't been open about what he wanted, he wouldn't have known all of that. And I just can't express how important it is with anybody with a debilitating disease to be able to talk to them openly about what's happening to them, what's going to happen, their fears, and let them be honest and open, because it's all in their heads and they just don't know how to get it out sometimes. Not everybody's as brave as John is and as honest, and it's hard. It's a hard conversation. So be there for the caregivers, give them a break whenever you can. And okay, this might sound like a shameless plug for Daybreak, but this is for any daycare center. If they can go to a day program where they can be around other people who also have limitations and also have problems, to come together and have some fun for a few hours and have an escape and a change of scenery while giving their family some respite, do it. It's great to get out of that same headset of this is my life and this is a rut, and have something different, something fun to do, a reason to get out of bed every morning or even once or twice a week. Just do it.
That's great advice. Rob, did you have anything to add?
Well, just one thing that I've heard Peter say before, and that's it's really important. Is if you want to help out with someone who's going through this, either as the caregiver or the person with ALS, it's like make sure you fit into their schedule and not establish your own. And John and Peter's friends were so good at that. They knew the right times to be there and the right times not to be, and were very, very conscious of of not getting in the way of negotiating the grind that sometimes ALS can be.
Definitely. Well, I want to spend some time focusing on John as a veteran. His service was a big part of who he was. And how did that shape the way he faced ALS? Peter, maybe to you.
Oh, yeah, the VA system was incredibly positive, incredibly helpful. It would have been a nightmare without them. Everything that we needed when we contacted the local VA. Initially, it was a challenge with the older system, with the VA doing the processing, paperwork, applications, providing information, medical information, going through many, many channels to get approval as a disability. ALS is now considered, a few years ago, the VA finally acknowledged that VA is a service-connected disability because they determined that there are more than twice as many veterans going through ALS as the general population. So with that in mind, the VA amped up their program a little bit to help veterans get through the hurdles because they realized that time was of the essence. VA had sometimes a very short fuse to be able to achieve what it ultimately would do. So they actually helped us in terms, like Rob mentioned, doing a modification on the home to make it wheelchair accessible. The VA helped with that. The VA helped with financing for a vehicle, a wheelchair adaptable vehicle. We have to drive them around. And every time we went into the VA for medical reviews and interviews, everybody was really positive. We had positive response from VA in Martinsburg, West Virginia, and here in the local clinic at Fort Detrick here in Frederick, Maryland. And support for the veterans is critical. And they've got a new website with the VA medical help. That's kind of an all-inclusive. It's a total transition from what had been the routine a couple of years ago. Now everything is on one web page, and it's almost self-explanatory with everything up front. And any issues that you're dealing with, whether you're dealing with the veteran medical issue, a family issue, a caretaker issue, or just help dealing with forms, they have support for veterans through different levels at the VA.
That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that you guys had all that support. It's much deserved. Rob, I have a two-part question for you. First, how did John's background as a veteran influence how you approach telling his story? And then as a follow-up, what do you think John's sense of duty and courage taught those around him in both his military and personal life?
Before I get into that, just quick note. Pete had the idea of preparing some notes for tips for anybody who is a veteran who is dealing with the Veterans Administration. So if there's anybody here or who watches this chat, Lonnie, by the way, is that something we can put in the chat just as a reference for everybody? I just thought it's got some links in it. They're very self-explanatory. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I didn't really see John through a veteran's lens, at least initially, because, he was 35, 40 years away from that, and I knew him as this fitness guru and long distance runner and all of that. Thinking back, and I think a lot of the strength of his personality, I said, was formed when he was growing up gay on the island, and he had to be very quick-witted, and he had to be somebody who, the best defense is a good offense, I guess, maybe in a way. But I think maybe out of that, just thinking about it, I think the discipline that the Army gave him, that when it came to those last couple of years and just being there and moving forward in various ways that John could, I think I'm guessing here, but I'm thinking that he probably derived quite a bit of resolve and discipline out of that Army experience.
Thank you. In regards to the partnership with AM ALS, it brings this story into a larger movement. What does that mean to each of you personally?
Well, I just hope it brings more insight to people of what's out there and, how you can possibly get some positivity while going on this terribly difficult journey, and how you can help other people, both with ALS and their families and support systems. And I just hope that it helps to bring up more funding for ALL research, because I know that's one of the big goals of Rob's program, and getting, every time you link on, it always says make a donation. So yeah, donate, educate, insight, and just creating a bigger community to help everybody, while telling a moving story about an incredible man and his husband.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think it's, to get me out of my cocoon, so to speak, and to be able to talk to other people about about the ALS situation. Uh, I'm impressed by the group AM ALS making the connection to the community, allowing people to speak about the issues that they're going through and be as open as they can uh, to be able to share the experience. So I think that's very valuable.
Thank you. There is a comment in the chat, from Chris Spaulding, and I apologize. I hope you can't hear this background noise here in my house. Except the VA policy discriminates against veterans and their spouses via its policy of requiring veterans to suffer with ALS for 8 years from diagnosis in order for the spouse to qualify for the dependent indemnification compensation kicker. This 8 year suffering requirement effectively excludes the spouses of ALS veterans from qualifying for the kicker. Legislation to remove this discrimination is once again languishing in Senate and House committees. So thank you, Chris, for
Yeah.
adding them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that 8 year kicker is for the length of marriage for the spouse. But if they are connected at the time,
No, Peter, I'm sorry. That 8 year requirement is from the time of diagnosis of the veteran being diagnosed with ALS. I'm not a veteran, uh, but
my involvement was immediate as a spouse.
yeah, I mean this legislation has been introduced into Congress, I think, at least 5 different times, and Congress fails to act.
Chris, do you want me
And
to give a little background?
yeah,
So, hi, I'm Julie. I work at AM ALS alongside Christy. And I just put into the chat a link to information about the bill that Chris is speaking of. It's called the Justice for ALS Veterans Act. And you can read that we have a one-pager on there and there's more information. But it basically is what the act is trying to do is to correct a loophole. So as Chris said, veterans who are living with ALS basically have to live for 8 years in order for their spouses to be post-diagnosis to be eligible for this kicker. And so basically what this is trying to do is to close that loophole so that someone, because some people don't live for 8 years who are living
but
with ALS, and some people
the
do.
vast majority of people with ALS die within 5 years of onset. Now, you all can contact your
Yeah, your reps and senators. This link has a one of those, like we call it a fast action form, where you put in your information and it will send a pre-written letter which you can edit to your representatives. But you can also, I'll put my email in the chat if anybody wants to learn more about it. I'd be happy to set up a time to talk to anyone about it. It's just Julie at IMALS. But Chris has been meeting with representatives and senators throughout the country to talk about this bill. And our veterans team is also a team that works on veteran-specific legislation as it pertains to ALS or supporting veterans living with ALS. So Peter, I'd love to talk with you about it at some point. But yeah, we are really trying to do whatever we can to support veterans as well as the people who care for them as much as we can.
I'm surprised because John lived almost 6 years with ALS.
Yeah.
And my support started, my separate support in them, spousal support started within a month or two
Yeah.
after John's
Yes,
death.
but Peter, you won't qualify, unfortunately, for the kicker.
It's an additional
Like
payment.
it's like an extra $300 a month on top of what you have been getting.
Oh, I've never even known that that was even available. I wouldn't have, that's why I'm
Yeah.
unaware of what that extra payment is then.
That's interesting to know. That is something I did not know either. So this kind of conversation is important for us too, and carrying this forward, we're going to have conversations with other organizations and groups, and it's really good to understand this and know this. So thank you.
So I'll give you an example. I've been communicating with Senator Cornyn's office, and they're saying, well, we're not going to support the legislation as is because there may be other afflictions that are caught by this 8-year requirement. So they leave the ALS veterans in the lurch as they come up with this excuse not to act.
And in the chat, Juan, who's also a member of our veterans team and a veteran who's living with ALS, said elected officials kicking it down the road under the pretext of exactly what Chris said, not capturing other conditions. So it's definitely an issue. I would be happy to set up a time to talk to you guys about it outside of this too, if you wanted to go into more depth. But as always, Chris is an incredible advocate who's been really pushing this to in Congress. But sorry, Kelly, I didn't mean to interrupt your fantastic
Ellen,
facilitation.
oh no, Ellen, go, please, ask your question. Thank you.
Maybe I'll unmute and then maybe you'll hear me. I wasn't sure how much time we had, and I hope this question doesn't go too long, but it's for Peter. And you've spoken so eloquently about the gratitude you have for the community that surrounded you and John on this journey. And there's many of us on this call that know from personal experience how painful and traumatic caregiving can really be for someone with ALS. And I'm curious to know if you're still able to lean on those same community members as you process your journey and as you adjust to your life without John now.
Yes, for the most part, but my needs are less, of course. But we still have birthday parties together. We still have holidays together. And the running community as well. I'm invited every week to go to a running community luncheon, and I go occasionally. But yes, I'm still involved, but not as much.
Thank you. Mickey asked a question. How long did it take the doctors to diagnose from the first symptom?
With John, it actually took about 2 years. A good year and a half initially, and then they've had to finalize it in the last half year. But close to 2 years for the doctors to they had to go through a process of eliminating absolutely every potential cause for what his condition was, loss of muscle. Because there's so many other diseases that are involved that could be causing that. And they had to determine through the process of elimination, when everything else was cut out, they said, oh yeah, you've got ALS.
Did he have any unnecessary surgeries or anything during that process, or was it kind of just running tests and ruling things out?
Yeah, no surgeries were needed at
That's good.
that
Yeah,
point, no, fortunately.
great.
Kelly, I just want to point out we have 1 minute left. So I would just like to thank the panelists so much for being here tonight, and Kelly for your exceptional moderating skills. I cannot tell you what you did an amazing job. If you have additional questions in the audience, if you want to send them, you can either send them to me, or Julie already put her email address in there, but you can also send them my way and we will get them to Robert, Peter, and Chris. We will be happy to share those with them and send you some follow-ups. And if you have not yet watched the film, please do so in your email when you signed up to attend tonight. You got a link to an exclusive viewing. So please feel free to take the time and remind me. I know, Kelly, you said they were extending the watch date.
November 10th.
Yep. So you will have a little bit of extra time to watch it if you have not watched it yet. So thank you, everybody. And
Christy, could I just pop in for
yeah,
one quick second?
please do.
Okay, maybe a minute. We'll see. In answer to the question of what do I hope for the film, just the film will be on PBS in May, which is, besides being ALS Awareness Month, is also Pacific Islanders Heritage Month. It's also Older Americans Month. And so what we're embarking on now, and this is our first stab at it, is to engage people can really benefit from watching the film. And we want to build an audience, and we want to grow the audience. And of course, that also, takes, besides all our effort, it takes money. And so the arrangement we've made with AM ALS is that we're doing this kind of as a mutual, a 50-50 fundraiser. So I think Lonnie was going to drop into the chat the link where, if anybody feels after having watched the film or participated in this that you can help, it will be greatly appreciated. Uh, IMALS, of course, will appreciate it as well. And yeah, we're also cognizant of the fact that anyone with the challenge of ALS, there are a lot of constricting factors. So we don't expect this from everyone. We just want to put it out there if you feel strongly enough to help us find our audience.
Awesome. Well, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Yep. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. It's a deep and meaningful one. So we really appreciate that, Peter, that you shared that journey with us, and Robert for capturing it, and Chris for being there with John and Peter through that journey. So thank you all. And the chat has a couple links to the film, the donation site rather, that Lonnie put in. Julie and I have our emails there. So if you have any additional questions that we can aim toward the folks here tonight, we will be happy to do that. And we will, again, we'll also share this recording with you all probably in the next day or so. All right. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.